Parashat Behaalotcha. Parashat Behaalotcha, I'll give you a short summary of the parasha. It starts with the command to Aaron to light the menorah. And in retrospect, after his two sons died for sacrificing wrong fire, he is going to light the menorah. It's going to be an internal flame in the temple. Then they talk about the Levites work in the tabernacle, the Mishkan. They are celebrating Passover in the desert. They begin the story of the journey in the desert as well. They talk about the trumpets. And then there's a big deal. Vayibin So'aron, for the first time, the heart of the covenant is going to journey from one place to another. There's a new station, and this is a big deal. And then we start, I would call a bigger chapter, which is the chapter of something that's going to be reoccurring in the book of Bamidbar or Numbers. And I'm talking about the complaints. This is something that's going to be reoccurring almost in every portion from this moment till the end of it. And that's what's going to happen. Every time you're going to have another complaint. It's going to be complaint about the water. It's going to be about complaint about the food. It's going to be complaints about there's no meat. Complaints, until the point they're going to go against Moses and say, you're not supposed to be the leader. We know where it's going to end, and I hope in the minutes we have left, I want to jump in the conversation about this specific issue, the complaints, and put it in the frame of where I'm standing from. I am not Sandra, if you noticed. I'm not Sandra. And I don't know the way she teaches it. She told me that she goes into the text. I love the text. We're going to talk about the text. But I am looking for meaning. And in the sense of meaning is not the meaning of what the text says. I want to make it relevant to my life. 30 seconds about it. When we read the parasha, the portion of the week, over and over again, every day, every week, years, and I see people here with a lot more white hair than what I have, that means that you probably heard a story 20, 30, 40 times. How can you repeat a story and still make it relevant to your life? What are the teachings that we can take to our life and make sense of it? And this is why I actually love the weekly portion, because I truly believe that if you look deep down into the conversation of what happens inside of it and draw meanings and being influenced from it, every year it's a new story. Every year it's a new concept. So this year I'm going to start by looking at the story of the Mitonenim. And again, I'm going to use a lot of Hebrew terminology. I'm going to try to translate it into English. And I'm going to use the verses. So if you all have the Bibles, even if I'm not going to read the same translation you have, I hope you will understand what I'm talking about. So let's start. So we know the people of Israel are living in the desert. Living in the desert, they left Egypt. And from the very moment of their existence, we see that there is a trouble of, I would call you say it, adopt to a new way of life, right? They are slaves in Egypt, and they wake day in, day out, they do the same things. And as they leave Egypt, you would think that if you left slavery, everything you're going to be offered is going to be amazing, right? You were just slave, you suffered every day. Now you're joining a new way of life. You should be very happy of everything that happens, but it's not the case. And we hear the complaints and we don't understand what's the story. So just after the ark begins to journey, we read in chapter 11, verse 1. In Hebrew and in English. ויהי העם כמתאוננים רע באוזני השם, וישמע השם, ויחר אפו, ותבער בהם אש. The people complained. You read the verse in your books. The people complained before the Lord, and the Lord heard it. He was angry at them. Then a fire struck them and ate revenge in the outskirts of the camp. We hear a complaint and we don't understand what's the story. Why do you complain right now? And the verse is going to tell you what really was the complaint. At verse 6, we hear the story. This problem this time is the manna. We have a problem with the manna. Now the manna was like, now our gullets are shivered. There is nothing at all, nothing but the manna. People are complaining. They receive the manna day after day and there's nothing else. Reminder, every morning the people woke up and outside of their tent, they received the manna. The manna, what can you call it? A magical bread, right? Every kid in Israel, we learn it in one of the first classes. The Midrash, our sages say, what was the flavor of the manna? You know what was the flavor of the manna? According to the verses, it says it was sweet. But the sages gave us like something to reminisce about. You put it in your mouth, and everything you want it to taste like, that would be the flavor. A magical bread indeed, right? And you remember as a kid, everybody's so excited. We're receiving the manna. You can put it in your mouth and say, I want candy, I want chocolate, I want a steak. And that would be the flavor. Obviously, I'm not sure if it was the case. We hear it was something white and it was sweet. And it's awesome. But the people are complaining, how come it comes every day and it's boring? We don't want to have it anymore. That's everything we have. The next verse describes it. And the manna was like coriander seed, and the color was like white. Bedelium. Don't know how to read it in English. Dolach. So what's the problem? If you receive a daily portion of bread to your table, to your tent, that should be a great sign, right? God is there providing for you. What's better than that? People are working hard in the field and they work all day as slaves to get a piece of bread. And now this bread is being served to the front of your tent. And it's interesting. What was this complaint about? Really, it was about the food. They didn't like the food enough. They received bread from the sky immediately. I think that the story should remind you of something that happened before. And when the Torah describes such a story and they give you some signs, it should bring you back in memory of things that I've heard before. Where did we saw a story about people completely wrong about how God provides his food to them? Way back. Way back, even in the very beginning of Genesis, in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, God provided Adam and Eve all the food and necessities of life. Himself, God went and planted all the trees. Everything was there to be eaten by them. This is exactly bread from the sky. When you go out and you just take a fruit and you bite into it, you don't need to work hard for it. God himself went and planted all of it. But he said one thing, you remember, there's one tree. It's going to be God's tree. Do not touch that tree. One request. Everything is going to be provided, but one request. Do not touch God's tree. And Adam and Eve, indeed, at that time, rejected the offer and the gift. They were given everything, but it wasn't enough. They want to have control. They want to be control of the garden, and they want to have everything, including the things that they're not supposed to, because they want to be the owners of the garden. The one tree, the master of the garden told them not to touch, they went and took it. They went and touched it. They wanted to have the power on the resource of the food. They didn't want presents. They didn't want everything just there. They want to be the masters of their own destiny. We want to take the things that we are not supposed to. We want to control everything. Remember how all of it ended, right? God told them, oh, you want to control everything? No problem. The biggest curse the man, Adam, received at that time was Bezeat apecha tochal lechem. Right? How is it here? It's Genesis 3:19. In the sweat of the face shall they eat bread. You want to sweat. You want to work hard. You don't want to receive presents. You don't want to receive bread from the sky. Okay, go. Sweat until you're going to work very hard until you're going to have it. Bread is different than fruits, though. Bread is something you need to work towards. You need to have a field. You need to take the grains. You need to mush them. You need to make flour. You need to work on it. You need to bake it. Think about the process a person needs to have bread. Fruits are naturally there. You eat it. But bread is something more developed that you need to work hard for it. You're going to work hard for it, but then it's going to be yours. I think having the bread as the punishment to Adam was essentially what you asked for. You wanted to control everything. You wanted to be the master of the garden. You wanted to decide what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. Here, you're free to take it. But when you take it, it's going to be yours after a lot of work. You don't just take it, you work for it until you're going to have it. We know that at the end of it, Adam and Eve were thrown away from the Garden of Eden. And we know there's two chariots. Two chariots were put there in the entrance to the garden to keep the people out of it, saying as follows: you want to be a master of your destiny? Go ahead. Work hard until you're going to be able to play hard. But now it's going to be reoccurring in the Exodus. After so many years of slavery, we are free. And God looks at us and say, they are babies. They have no power. They have no energy. They have no abilities. We need to be there. I need to be there to provide them. They left Egypt without anything, and I'm going to provide them. Am I going to provide them only warmth and love and kindness? No. I'm going to go back to the Garden of Eden, and I'm going to give them what they need. They need the bread. They need the bread without the working hard process. In the desert, there's no trees. When you are moving from place to place, it's not even an option. I am going to provide you lechem min hashamayim. As the verse says in Exodus 4, where is it? Exodus 15:16 or 16:15, that the people received the manna and asked, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses says to them, it is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. It's not a fruit, it's not fast, it's a bread. Something that usually men need to work hard to receive, but this is the magical bread from God. He's going to do the work. He's going to do all the process, and you're going to receive a manna, which is bread from the sky. So therefore, this bread symbolizes, we say, the process of working. And this is something that is given to the people to show them, I am here for you. I am here for you. I'm going to give you food that is used to be food for people, but it's going to be bread from the heavens. They ask Manu, what is it? How could it be? We know that for bread we need to work hard. Oh, that's the magical part. That's the miracle. I'm going to give you something you don't need to work hard, and it's still going to be bread. This is almost the repair of what happened in Eden. This is the bread that were given to the people. And it's funny that now, when they receive the bread, that is what needs to be worked hard on, and they receive it from God, it's almost like they're rejecting it again. We do not want this bread even that you're giving to us. We are now want something else. We need to work for it. We don't want to receive any gifts. Interesting, right? That the story of this incident happened just after we read about the chariots on the ark. There are chariots in the Garden of Eden to keep it safe, and you're not going to go in. The same word is being used. They're the chariots on the ark. And when these chariots welcomed us into the desert, we hear about the completely disorder of it. So now the people are complaining. They don't want the manna. They don't want to repair themselves. They want to be working for it. Look at the verse that describes what the people did with the manna. It is, I don't have the number of it, but it's 2 verses after that. The people would go about and gather it, grind it between milestones, or pound it in a mortar, boil it in pot, and make it into cake. It tasted like rich cream. When you receive a bread from the sky that you don't need to work on it, why would you have any process? The people wanted to have process and work towards this bread. Bread that is ready from the heavens is not good enough. We want to work on something. We want to have a process in it. And I think the proofs comes from a very interesting word in Hebrew that is recited here, and the translation in English is very poor. How did the verse started? Vayhi ha'am kemitonenim ra be'nei Hashem. And the riffraff in their midst fell craving. 11:4. But in Hebrew, the word is ita'avu ta'ava. It's almost, I would translate into, they craved to be craved, or they wanted to have a crave. The word mitonenim in Hebrew, the letters aleph, nun, nun, also describes a mourning. When somebody dies, before you bury him, you are an onen. Aleph, nun, nun. How come being in mourn of a lost is relevant to complain on bread? Any thoughts? I think, and that's the point that I want to talk about.
If you want them to talk, you have to tell them to unmute themselves. Everybody's muted.
Of course, if you want to talk, you can unmute yourself. How is the word mourning here is relevant? But if not, I will just tell you what I think. I think, as we said, that the translation, they wanted to crave to something. To mourn is to be sad on a loss. I think the people were sad from the fact everything was there from them. That's a very deep point, but it's true in life, and we know how it's relevant. When you have everything given, when everything is being provided to you, when you don't need to work for anything, that is something that could really frustrate the people. They wanted to work. You remember that in the verse they complain, or they remember the good things they had in Egypt. Look at the words. We remember the fish that we used to eat free in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. I always read it at the random list of a shopping bag they had. All the things that are mentioned here are things that are either on the ground or under the ground. We do not want things that comes from the heavens. We want things that are going to be provided by us. Very far from heavens, on the ground, under the ground. We want to work for it. We're gonna take it and we're gonna bake it in the oven and we're gonna mush it and we're gonna try to make the bread from the sky something else, because we want it to be ours. Back in the Garden of Eden, they received everything, but they wanted more. This is a replay of the Garden of Eden.
Is this connected, excuse me, is this connected to the saying, לא על הלחם לבדו יחיה האדם?
I must say that it's almost the opposite, because what you want to say is, there's a verse that says, not on the bread alone a man is going to live, but what everything God says. I want to say the opposite. I want to say that when people grow up, and we are growing up as a nation here, people need to work and have an effort to provide for themselves. The only time we're only taking and not giving back, it's when we are in our mother's womb. That's the only time that we need to be sheltered and protected. As we go outside, as we develop ourselves, as we are going to the world, we need, the people need, and the Israelites need to own their future. And they were taken from Egypt and they were given with everything. And now this is the time. It's a hard time, but it's time to cut the cords and make it our own. God, thank you for what you're giving us, but we want it to be a little bit in our power. We need to fix it. We need to shift it. We need to move it, because we need to have it. We need to own it. Only when somebody works for something, he can appreciate it. He can like it. He can understand it. The journey in the desert is not nearly a journey from point A to B. This is a journey into adulthood. They're going to enter the land of Israel soon, and they're going to have to work hard. The grains are not going to fall from the heaven. Nothing is going to wait for them. The people feel it and they understand it. We want to work and we want to prepare ourselves to the understanding that nothing is going to be provided. We need it to be our own. I started by saying we're looking for how is it relevant to our life. I think it's very easy and simple to understand. Every person has these points where it needs to be nurtured from the outside, but then there's going to be a point that he needs to do his own thing. Rebel, make things his own. Do not comply what is given, but really open his new journey and his new path. So how is it so that the people of Israel are starting this at this point? That's where they went wrong. I feel that God himself planned it, and he said to the people, you are in the desert, you are in the womb. This is your time to receive. They rejected it. They rejected it and they sinned by doing that. we can understand it, right? I tried to show the philosophy maybe of what went through their mind according to the text with the words that try to explain something. But this is the opposite of what you need to learn. When God takes you out of Egypt and he puts you into the journey, you need to be a riffraff not to understand that this is the time you need to be provided with God's power and God's help. And when you reject it, you got things wrong. And this is why you're a riffraff, and this is why you're a sinner, and this is how throughout the portions we're going to see, every time it's going to happen, a big punishment is going to come until Moses is going to pray for them and God is going to forgive them. But this is a lesson to be learned. There's time to be your own, and there's time to take God's blessing. Questions?
I would like to suggest that human beings like to be validated. Humanity likes to have purpose in life. And that is, I would say that would support your views on your talk this morning. I never thought of it this way. Thank you.
But I wanted to say, Vanessa, that it's true in our day and age that we need it. But when you are a baby in your mother womb, if you're going to leave too early, bad things are going to come from it. And that's the point. When the people wanted to reject God's blessing and God's nursery home, this is where the sin starts. They don't understand there's time and stages for everything. This wasn't the time to be all matured and I can do it by myself.
Yes, yes. We must never, ever lose sight that God is always with us.
Any other points? I was asked to end it in 6:30 sharp my time. So if there's no other point, I want to wish you all Shabbat Shalom. It was a pleasure to be here. And Sandra is going to be with you next week. I hope. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so very much.
I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.